Good evening. Happy Friday Eve. I'm glad that you all were able to make it here this evening. Welcome to our monthly town hall and our continued conversation. Before I begin, I want to allude to a few things. One, it is February. It is Black History Month, and I just want to honor Black History Month and for all the things and people that have done great things for us before we are here today. And the reason why we're here today is on the backs of wonderful people who have done great work. So in honor of Black History Month, I want to pause there. With that said, Black History Month is represented by many people who have done great things. Garrett A. Morgan, anyone want to tell me what he did? Little pop quiz. Stoplight. Yes, well, she just gave his whole bio. But yeah, so Garrett A. Morgan was an individual who did a lot of great things. And if you know anything about Garrett A. Morgan, he was the inventor of the first stoplight. And that stoplight was a result of him witnessing a car and a buggy get into a crash. And so he saw that as an opportunity to figure out how to save more lives and getting in front of the challenges that are faced when more cars were going to hit the road. He said, you know what, we need something to control that. The second thing he did was he created the smoke hood, or the gas mask that was the blueprint for the gas mask that those in World War I who fought for our country and defended our country. And he actually started that because in Lake Erie, underneath Lake Erie, there was a collapsed tunnel in which there were people trapped. He went into action, used his mask, and actually saved lives. So why am I bringing up Garrett A. Morgan today? Why am I referencing him today? Because there was an individual, a leader within our community, that saved one of our scholars' lives. Mr. Bradley Stokes was someone who jumped into action in our high school when there was a child who was choking. He instantly jumped in, saved that young person's life. And for that reason, I refer to him as someone who saw and needed to step in and saw the opportunity to make a difference in someone's life. And I just wanted us to pause for Mr. Stokes. Mr. Stokes, where are you? Are you here? If you can stand, Mr. Stokes, for us. And come on up. We have a certificate for you, sir. Keep going. Keep giving him a round of applause. So, Mr. Stokes, this says, in recognition and appreciation of your act of heroism on January 25th, 2019, your exceptional actions and dedication to a scholar and the preservation of his life is nothing short of awe-inspiring and commendable. We thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Give him one more round of applause, please. Thank you. So not only, Mr. Stokes exemplifying greatness and exemplifying what it means to do right by others, it is also what is outlined in our own core values as a district. When I first got here about 18 months ago, we spent a lot of time thinking about our core values and what we stood for. A lot of the things that not only Mr. Stokes exhibited, but all of our leaders and teachers in all of our buildings every single day do or live by these core values. These core values are the bedrock for what make our 5 commitments. About a year and a half ago, we sat down through town halls and coffee chats and otherwise to identify our 5 big commitments, the things that we say we're going to do to ensure our kids have a better future. And I don't think anyone debates these 5 things. We realize the importance of these 5 things. It's now figuring out how do we take them to the next level. The next level, like this team. For anyone's a college football fan out there, anyone a college football fan? There might be a few. The Clemson Tigers. So there's more than just a couple Clemson Tigers fans. So Clemson Tigers this past year overcame a hurdle. If you know anything about college football, there's usually one other team that's in that championship game, and that's the Alabama Crimson Tide. And the Crimson Tide, year after year, are those perennial champions. And Clemson is that team that is just on the cusp, always right there. And every once in a while, they might win the title. But they knew they had to do something different. They knew they had to take a courageous step in a different direction to ensure they can get to the next step. And in this picture, you see the courageous step they took. They had a quarterback, Kelly Bryant, who was 26-2. And you would think 26-2 is a pretty darn good record, and there's nothing wrong with being 26-2. But Dabo Swinney, the head coach, said, you know what? that's good, but we have to get to great. And there was a point in which he said, you know what, I'm going to put in this, highly qualified, this great high school quarterback into the biggest stages in college football. And as a result of this move and this decision, they moved from good on to great and won the national championship this past year. No, not dissimilar from this team. For those that know NFL football, this is a very familiar sight that we see in NFL football. 9 out of the last 18 years, this team has been in the Super Bowl, the New England Patriots. And this picture here is an example of them the minutes after the game celebrating their 6th Super Bowl in the modern era. What people forget sometimes is this reality. This picture here where Drew Bledsoe was actually the starting quarterback in 2001. He got hurt in the middle of that season, and they had to bring in someone, a different leader, someone with a different direction to change its path. And the rest is history. So as we think about this is not dissimilar than our own Cleveland Browns. Wait, I thought I'd at least get a couple cheers for our Cleveland Browns. So our Cleveland Browns, again, this may not be the picture you want to cheer to, if anyone remembers what was going on in this picture. This is actually the picture after the 0-16 parade. But after the 0-16 parade, there was a deep pride in that community who said they wanted something better. They wanted something that was going to bring them to the championship ranks like the New England Patriots or like the Clemson Tigers, because they were tired of seeing records like this. From 2015 to 2017, they had a total of 4 wins. 4 wins over 3 years. And they decided to do something different. They decided that, you know what, I'm going to take a risk in the first round and get someone on the defensive side of the ball. And not many people said that Baker Mayfield was going to come out number 1, but they selected him number 1 overall in that draft. And as a result, this past year, we have seen the Cleveland Browns win more games this past year than they did the previous 3 seasons combined. That's because they saw that there was a need to get better. They had a perennial problem they needed to address. And they've had to find a courageous way to get to the new outcomes they wanted to see. So when we think about progress, when we think about us stepping into the right direction, there are things that we need to do as a community. Because like the Cleveland Browns and the other 3 teams that I've mentioned, there are 3 things that are true. They were facing a perennial problem. There was a perennial challenge that those teams were facing at one point or another. The second was true that the stakes were high. If you think about anyone in NFL football, any professional sport or college sport for that matter, stakes are high. There's a championship at the end of the day. There's win and losses. That's what they play for. The third, each of those teams said, you know what? We have to think about this a little bit differently. We have to take that courageous step in a different direction to ensure that we get the outcomes we want to see. And those 3 things, those 3 teams, are no different than us. No different than where we are right now as a community. We have a perennial problem. Every year, over the past 15 years, this has been similar to our reality. Similar to our reality. A report card reflects something that isn't something that we collectively would say we're proud of, something that we know we can get better at, and we need to address. Every year, those stakes are high because we have kids graduating every single year, going into the real world, thinking that they are ready, hoping that they are prepared for the next step. At the end of the day, we have to continue to do better for them because they're watching. Small kids with big dreams are holding on to us to get better. And as you think about that, this is no dissimilar to what Karina told us in Time magazine last year. She traveled long and far to get an education. Because at the end of the day, she wants to be happy. And there's 6,590 plus kids that want that same level of happiness. And they know that if they get there, they will see the outcomes and the success follow. So let's put this all together. Our kids enter our school system 4 or 5 years of age. There's those middle school years. Middle school teachers or educators in the building. Yes, I love middle school. That's where I was a teacher and a principal. That's the fun age. For anyone that's used to that age, I mean, some people laugh. It is fun. There's a lot of different energy in the middle school age. And then they get prepared to walk across the stage. So if you think about this, this is a process that takes place over 12 or 13 years of a young person's life. And our job is to educate them so well that when they cross that stage, they can do anything in the world that's possible. But here's our current reality. 1%. 1% of them are ready. 93% of them, once they leave high school, if they're not in early college academy or in any of those early college classes, if they go off to LCCC, 93% of them are taking remedial courses. So they're taking courses that they should have already taken while they were with us because of years and years of undereducation. And this one, the last one, is the interesting piece that came from our actual scholars. They said 23% of them feel that they can do whatever they want and everything they need to be successful. Only 23% of them in high school. So if you put those three pictures together, we have to take a fresh look at this. We have to continue to figure out how we can get better and how we can create a system to get us to where we want to be. So when our kids walk across that stage, when they experience that moment of success isn't short-lived. It's actually transferring into their real world, into their real life, as they leave high school and on to college or off to their career. So I say all this to say this. They desire greatness, just like Tom Brady, who you may not be able to see, or Baker Mayfield, or even our Lorain athletic teams. We see success. We know what it feels like and tastes like. It's now time to translate it to our classrooms. And it starts with this community. It starts with us in this room today to think about how we step forward collectively as a unit towards those common goals. So, last town hall meeting was a very engaging conversation, and there were a few things we took away from the notes and the dialogue. What we heard from you first and foremost is that we should have more rigorous curriculum for our kids. We should spend more time thinking about putting really good material in front of our kids, and for that reason, going into the 2019-2020 school year, our elementary schools will have the opportunity to identify English language arts curriculum that will improve instruction. Our middle school teachers have already started to engage with the district around selecting middle school math curriculum to improve instruction. In addition to that, there was a request from the community, and it was a pretty lengthy conversation around getting more families involved. And those families need to be a part of our community, and I think we wouldn't disagree with that. And for that reason, we're reinitiating the Parent Advisory Council that has been requested by a number of folks, so that is coming back based on your feedback. We need to improve the morale of teachers. That was something that came up multiple times. We have and will continue to work on how we celebrate our teachers and the excellent things that they do, how we celebrate all of our staff for the excellent things they do. So we currently have events in which we celebrate staff and teachers. The most recent one was our Unsung Heroes dinner to appreciate wonderful people who have done great things in our classrooms and across our school buildings. But we're also going to relaunch our engagement survey. I cannot remember the teacher's name who was here last time, and I don't see her face now. But it was a request to have the survey that was given out way back when without the demographic information, asking for your school and all those things. So we're just going to send you a link and ask any employee who wants to give us that feedback to do so without the fear of it being identified or who you are. You won't have to log into Google or anything else. It'll just be a link. So we do truly, truly want your feedback to figure out how we get better. So therefore, we look forward to hearing your insights. Lastly, the concern around, or second to last, the concern around going to Cleveland for graduation. We will not be going to Cleveland for graduation. We decided to move graduation to Lorain Community College. And here's the reason why. Some probably are still saying, why not here at the high school? Two things are true. Over the past few years, and one predates my time here, weather got in the way. And I would hate for the most special day for a young person who is about to walk across the stage, be worried about whether it's going to rain or not, and everything having to be moved inside. And from my understanding, when that happened a couple years ago, there was a big rush to move everything indoors and made it a little bit hectic, and I would hate for that day for young people to be hectic. The second thing, when we made the earlier decision last year to have it in the gymnasium, it didn't fit everybody. There were a lot of folks that were still in this space. There were a lot of folks in the cafeteria, and I would hate for an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent, or maybe even a younger brother or sister who was waiting for their older sibling to cross that stage to be seeing it for the first time on a screen. So Lorain Community College will allow not only people that are in the gymnasium, but also the auditorium to fit in one space at their field house. So graduation will be at LCCC. And lastly, and probably the one that is on the hearts of many, but the one that we'll spend the most time talking about tonight, is the uncertainty around what is to come. So the piece where people are thinking, like, what's about to happen? What is he going to say? What is he going to do? What is the district going to say? What is the district going to do? And I want to pause here because I understand the challenge of not knowing. And the challenge it creates is when there's a vacuum between the time that I communicate to all of you and the next time I communicate to all of you. There's a lot of other communication. There's a lot of things that are said or done. Whether they're true or not, they're still said. And that creates a ton of uncertainty for people. And I apologize deeply for not being able to communicate with you every day in some form or fashion, but please know that every month, that's when these updates come out. But that uncertainty is real. And I want to fix that. Part of the fix will make sure that whatever we do will happen on an annual basis. Any of those changes, you will know what is coming and how it is coming, and that's what tonight is about, creating a system of excellent schools. So what does that mean? So as we think about creating a system of excellent schools, it's rooted in our core values. Again, our five commitments. Our commitments are the same and will remain the same, but we're, instead of spreading ourselves across 5, we're to spend our time and energy on 1. Spend our time and energy diving deep into one commitment that says, you know what, we need to create schools where our scholars and our adults can thrive. To do that, there are 4 parts, and some of these parts came from our conversation last month, so you will see even some of your own personal words come up on this screen. There's 4 parts of an excellent school system, one of which, rigorous and relevant curriculum. We would all agree that our kids need to have great stuff in front of them all the time. The second is built trust and shared expectations around our core values that we all can believe in. The third of which speaks to the importance of growing, promoting a joyful culture for all, spending time thinking about how we get better and having conversations around how we get better. And the fourth is, and this is the piece that I think the sentiment of this room speaks so loudly to, is creating that tightened community feel, that support system that makes sure our kids walk across this stage with success. So given those 4 parts of our excellent school system, there's actually one piece that we're already starting to see some traction. Even though this is something we're initiating, we're also seeing some initial traction. First and foremost, you've probably heard me or some of our team speak to how many lessons that were standards aligned when we first got here. That number was 17%. We're now up to 37% of our classrooms have standard aligned instruction. Yes, please give teachers a round of applause for that. Because I want to underscore that there's a lot of hard work happening in our classrooms every single day. And that growth doesn't happen without that dedication of getting better. And so I really appreciate all the hard work that is going into those classrooms with our teachers every single day to see that jump. That's awesome to see. The second piece that is true, we're seeing that growth happening in ELA and math classrooms. We're seeing more and more classrooms where the rigor and the relevance of instruction is stronger every single day in a lot of our classrooms. And it happens because of this. Admiral King being the example, they actually went ahead and said, you know what, we want this rigorous and relevant curriculum in their classrooms for ELA and other subject areas, and they're seeing the benefits pay off. More and more of the classrooms in Admiral King Elementary, for example, are seeing gains because of the quality material that they're putting in front of their kids. The number of standards aligned lesson plans are increasing because of those materials. So it is working. We're taking steps in the right direction. So I say all this to really capture this sentiment. In all of our schools and in our classrooms, there is excellence. There are great things happening every single day. But our job is to make sure those great things happen every day across all of our schools. So excellence that we see in pockets is something that we want to see across the system of excellent schools. With me so far? So with that said, I really don't want to show this slide much longer, but this is where we are. These are where our schools are individually and how they're performing. So if we're trying to get to a system of excellent schools, we have work to do to make sure that all of our schools are creating the excellent outcomes we want to see across the board. The reality of the situation, we see some great progress in some of our schools. Larkmore Elementary, for example, is a C overall. Southview Middle School is a C overall. So we're seeing progress in some, but again, to get to that system of excellence, we need to figure out how to get that excellence to all. So if we're going to move from here to the level of championship ranks, we have some work to do. We have to double down on how we think about our commitments, deeply focus in on the one around creating schools where adults and scholars can thrive, and focus our time and energy on making all of our schools across the system great. So how do we do that? First, these 4 parts, thinking about how do we make sure these things live in every school building. And then the second piece is, which I think is the most important for this community, is we need to involve our community to figure out how to support our schools and their specific needs. So you see at the bottom here a new task force. It's called the School Transformation Task Force. The role of that STT will be pushing and helping our schools that are the lowest performing in the district to improve in 3 areas. 1, our lowest schools in the district will have certain autonomies to improve their schools, and they will help select those autonomies that schools will use. They will help create that shared expectation across the board for every school, while also ensuring that the goals that they set are very school-specific and can be driven towards collectively. So if you're a member, if you want to be a part of that STT, you will get more information about that as we roll this out over time. The top part of this graphic, actually gives you how that'll work. So you have this STT that will work together to create this approach. And then with teachers, with leaders sitting down and creating a plan to address the needs of that individual school. And over time, create that operational plan that will ultimately lead to this level of success, pathways towards success. So collectively, together, there will be a community-facing input. There will be teachers and leaders working together to create their plan and ultimately see outcomes. So how will we evaluate it might be the next question, and that is very simple. Every year we get a state report card. 50% on how we evaluate our schools will be based on that state report card. 50% will be based on our big board, formerly known as big board, but moving it to what we're calling our Excellent Schools dashboard, so that we can see in real time how our schools are improving, while also looking at their yearly outputs. So 50% of our evaluation will be that, of the state report card, 50% the Excellent Schools dashboard. When you put those 2 together, we evaluate our schools on a cycle, and we'll evaluate our schools on a cycle. So in December and January, we will look at our schools to see where they're falling in one of the 4 designated areas. They'll fall in one of the 4 categories, and based on those categories, we'll collaborate with schools and their STTs to determine the plan forward to improve them. As we improve, we'll support those schools to get to the outcomes we want. Again, this is school leader-led, this is school leader-driven, to ensure that they're creating the plans necessary for their schools. And then again, we'll go through the evaluation cycle throughout the school year to see how schools are performing, if they're moving on the Excellent Schools dashboard, if we're seeing the increases on their state report card, and ultimately the following year make determinations of where schools fall amongst the 4 categories. So here are the 4 categories. We look at schools through a few different lenses. Obviously, performance. We're obviously going to make sure that schools are held accountable to outcomes. Again, that's school leaders all the way to every staff member. There will be defined autonomy for our schools that are the lowest performing, meaning they will have a selection of autonomies, but ultimately there will be a smaller number than those that are already performing. They should have the freedom to do what's right because they're already getting results. And then that oversight by the central office will vary. For our lowest performing schools, higher intervention from the district. Higher performing schools, lower intervention from the district. Here are the 4 categories. Of course, if it's an excellent school system, your highest category will be your excellent schools. Those are the schools that are the highest performing. Those are the ones that will have the most autonomy and freedom to push forward. Innovation schools, that's our second to highest tier of schools. Those are schools that are doing most of the right things and pushing towards the right outcomes and ultimately are creating change for kids, but still are not quite to that level of excellence. Right there, but not quite there. Our improvement schools. These are our schools who are at this place where they're getting some of the things right. If you look at the state report card, you know what? They might be moving in the right direction. If you look at the Excellent Schools dashboard, there might be some elements of strength, but in large part, there's a lot of work still to be done. Those schools will get a deeper level of intervention and support from the district. The last, but definitely not least, are our empowerment schools. These are the schools that will get the most support and intervention from the district and otherwise. These are the schools that need the most attention to dramatically change the outcomes for our kids if we're ever going to move towards a system of excellent schools. So, this year, where do our schools fall? Right now, we're not yet at excellence. We'll get there. Not there yet. Our innovation schools. These are our schools that are just the tier below of our excellence schools and are moving in the right direction and starting to get really good results. And you see the names of those schools up there. Our improvement schools, a large number of our schools who, again, elements are moving in the right direction but need some very targeted interventions to support their efforts. And last but not least, our empowerment school. Our empowerment school is our high school. That is the area where we'll spend most of our time and energy getting better. So our empowerment school this year is our high school. That is the one, if we think about it, that is the one that we hear the most about. That is the one that needs the biggest amount of support. That is our biggest school. So it's no surprise, given where we are, that they landed there. So what does this mean? From an excellent school, again, when we get to excellence, you will be the beacon of which we will look to for support, best practices, outlining what we can do to get better, having people visit you because you're truly excellent. Innovation schools, we intentionally have a director of innovation who will support those schools who are doing a lot of good things, and with the right pilots and supports, they can get better faster. Those are our innovation schools. Our improvement schools, this is where the intervention gets a little bit heavier. They will need to make very, very specific performance improvement plans to ensure they're meeting their quarterly benchmarks. They will spend more time meeting with our chief schools office to target their energy towards the goals that they have set out and ensure that they're moving in the right direction and moving away from the empowerment zone. Our empowerment schools will be led by our school leadership teams to create a path forward. They will have the autonomy to change the direction of that school. They will have the ability to go forward with a plan that makes sense for them to drastically improve the outcomes for kids. So what does that mean more deeply and more simply? So, excellent schools, great practices, share them. Let's get better. Innovation schools, opportunity to go from good to great. Spend a lot of energy on focusing on what you're doing well and spending a little bit more energy on things you need to improve to get to that next level. Improvement schools, you probably have a foundation of good stuff going on. Build on it. Move in the right direction. Our empowerment schools, here's where we need those that are in those schools, and this year it is Lorain High, to say, I want to be a part of this transformation. All staff members that are in that school will go through a selection process to be a part of that school going into next year. It'll be the job of those that are in that school to say, I want to be a part of this school going forward. Those members in Lorain High will get more information about what that means and what that looks like going forward. So, over the next 6 to 12 months, we'll spend a lot of time heightening our support to our high school, spending significant time talking to our teachers and leaders to talk through what those shared expectations should look like for all of our schools, improve our ELA and math curriculum in elementary and math, which we promised we would do, and then the Lorain Way 2.0. Last year, we sent out the Lorain Way very late in the year. We won't do that again. We'll make sure that teachers have an opportunity to speak with us, talk to us about what those shared expectations should look like, and spend the spring to build those out together. Over the next 12 months, spending more time to fully flesh out the system of excellent schools for our following year, meaning January 2020, working with teachers and leaders throughout the district and the community to really make sure in 2020 that we can do even more to get better. And then in 24 months, I truly believe we will have a model for turnaround excellence in this district. It will take that amount of time to get there, and with that time, we can do this all together. So, first and foremost, you will receive a letter to all of staff that says exactly what I have been speaking about today. We will start the Parent Advisory Committee again in March, so in a couple weeks, you will see those meetings reconvene. For those that are interested in the staff engagement survey and want to fill it out, given that it would be anonymous at this time, you will have our opportunity to do so. We will partner with our union leadership and teachers to think through the full launch of the System of Excellence Schools in 2020. And then we'll make sure that we develop not only a plan to implement new curriculum, but have the voice of all of our teachers throughout the process. And then obviously create community task forces where needed to ensure that we're pushing in the right direction for our schools. The biggest thing, and I kept this separate, because I think this is a part in which I wish I could do more of and spend more time just listening to you. So over the next few weeks, you will start to see invites for anyone, any teacher, any staff member who would like to sit and just talk about what is on their mind. I will be made available for you. No one else, no cameras, no one else, just teachers, staff, and myself, just to talk. Because I think it's important as we go through this change, and as we build out this system, where every year we're evaluating our schools, and schools that are not performing in the right level will go through deeper interventions, versus schools who are doing really well will go through different interventions. I want to make sure everyone's clear on what that looks like for each individual throughout the district. Okay? And I'll leave you with this. Other than the fact that when I was talking to my son, I said, Christian, can you talk to your brother and just read him a book? He said, okay. I said, can you do a close read of the book? That's what happened. And my youngest son, if you could see his face on the other side, he had like a smushed cheek up against the page. But I bring this picture up for a couple of different reasons. There's an innocence in each one of our kids. Each one of our kids wants something better. They want us to realize the potential that lives within all of us and all of them. And they also realize that us as adults, we were kids too. And there's still a little bit of that kid inside of us. And I just ask for this community to take that little bit of kid that's still inside of us, that innocence that still lies within us, and just believe what is possible for our kids. So as we go down this road, and as we can create this system of excellent schools for all of our kids, we live with a little bit of this innocence and a little bit of this hope to get us through to the next level. At this time, I will take any questions that you have about the presentation. I believe there were note cards that were submitted to you all, so if you have them, we will collect them so I can read your questions. And I will take a volunteer who would like to read the questions, because I will make sure. Thank you so very much. If you have cards, just raise them above your head. We'll have people come around and collect them. If you need a minute to jot your question down, please take that now. So if you have questions, please submit them so that we're going to go through all of them. So please make sure that you submit your questions, because I want to make sure that every voice is heard and we leave with very, very little confusion around our next steps. I am ready when you are. Sorry, I might have turned it off. I apologize. Check.
Okay, in a Titan touch point, you stated that we all need to do whatever it takes to educate the children in Lorain. If you believe we need to do whatever it takes, why do you continue to refuse to attend board meeting?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question. And I don't think it's a refusal to attend the board meetings. I think it's a process. I think, knowing and understanding the board president, obviously we speak on a weekly basis, we're getting to a place of understanding what is it we're going to talk about. Ooh, I apologize. I'll stay maybe right here. Get to a place of what we need to discuss before we go in that conversation. If we were to just jump into that conversation, I would not want the school board or myself to be reflected in a way that we're not organized in our conversation. And I think out of respect to the school board, I want to make sure we're on the same page before walking into that space. But I think it's a fantastic question.
Okay, town hall monthly meetings are set at 5 p.m. during the week. Can we have a weekend meeting time, or can meeting times be more flexible for working parents?
Absolutely. That's not a problem. We settled on Thursday at 5 o'clock only because it was consistent, but we can change it and open to change it. It's not a problem.
Okay. I don't quite understand this question. The Cleveland Browns did not improve until the coach was let go. Is this going to be the case with Lorain City School CEO?
Oh. So I'm Hugh Jackson. Is that what I'm hearing? Well, I don't think so. But I guess I can't really answer that question honestly because ultimately I wouldn't make that decision. But if the question is, do I want to be here? Absolutely. Do I want to be part of the solution? Absolutely. But that'll take time for us to get to those solutions, and please know my commitment is never wavering until someone tells me it has to be something different.
Okay. High school teachers have to reapply for their jobs. Will some teachers be losing their jobs, or will they just be placed in a new position? Some of these cards are hard to read, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. If I capture the essence of it, do high school teachers need to reapply? And if they don't get selected, will they go somewhere else? So two things are true. Yes, obviously if you're a tenured teacher, you have a right to a position in Lorain City Schools. Will it be at the high school? Possibly not.
With the CEO being portrayed in the media as not working with the community, how can we change this image and get information more accessible to the community?
Great question. I think it's a challenging one, right? I think my stance has always been the same. When there's negativity or other comments that are personal, I feel as personal attacks or otherwise, I usually don't respond. I think the time and energy should be spent towards our kids, towards our young people, and making sure that they're successful. And the idea of perpetuating that narrative doesn't make sense for me as someone who cares solely about the well-being of our young people and not about the politics of the city.
Okay, it says, last year you stated no summer school due to, lack of time to prepare. Are we having district-wide summer school?
So funny you asked that. So today we had our executive leadership team meeting, and those that are part of that executive leadership team, you know I've asked for the past 3 or 4 meetings, what are we doing about summer school? So yes, it is on the docket. We will have summer school for some of our elementary kids, and then again, some credit recovery for our upper grades. A full-blown summer school, we're still not there yet, but those are the 2 areas we will address through summer school.
In each building, good things are happening.
Amen.
Each one has different demographics. Instead of looking at buildings and comparing, what about looking at grade level and how to improve that grade?
I think it's a great idea. I think we do a little bit of both. I think from my lens, I'm charged with ensuring that our team is working on the entire system. So we do look most broadly at the entire system, again, by school. But then our team does a tremendous job of spending time looking at individual grade levels in schools and all those other pieces. So that does happen, but maybe what I'm hearing from that question is how do we do a better job of celebrating individual grades, and we can do that.
The next one is a comment, and it just says, thank you for instituting pre-K in all elementary schools.
Wow, not a problem. I'll be honest though, I could not, it was an idea that was brought to us by community members, and it's being executed by our director of early childhood, who does a tremendous job leading that work to ensure it happens. So it is something we'll continue to push on, and I thank you, Mr. Dieter, for leading that work, and I thank those that are part of the conversation to ensure it happens. So can we give them a round of applause for making it happen?
Okay. Sorry, I can't read the handwriting. Okay, it says, why do you keep honoring Clemens but never mentioning OSU? We have lots of students, Lorain students, who have gone to do great things.
I promise. You know what? Matter of fact, I will wear red at the next town hall. No, it was brought up last time, and the reason why I didn't use OSU this time, because the analogy I was trying to convey was that each one of those organizations were at an inflection point where they had to take a little bit of courage and step up and do something a little bit different to make dramatic change for their system. Not that OSU hasn't done that, but they're consistently good all the time. So I think it was really, I was trying to find those programs that made a choice to go a different direction. But I will find a way to weave in our Buckeyes.
Okay.
And maybe the Eagles, but that's not a conversation.
As president of the NAACP, Mr. Hardy, do you know if the Academic Distress Committee will be adding anyone else? Have a concern if no blacks are on the committee?
Got it. I'm aware of the conversation of who will replace our ADC Commission chair. There's been no confirmation whatsoever of who that individual might be, and there really hasn't been much of a timeline either around who will, or when that position will be held. I know the state commissioner, the state superintendent, the deputy superintendent are actively looking through names, and one of their biggest priorities is the equity question, finding a person of color while also finding the right fit to support the efforts of our district.
Okay. It just says high school reapplying for their jobs. Does this apply to admins also? So
our entire team at the high school, it is a process of transformation. So our chief schools office obviously supports and evaluates all of our school leaders, and there's a process in which they will go through naturally because of evaluation. As far as all of the staff throughout the building, again, it is a selection process that will allow all of us to realize who and where our folks will land, and there will be more information provided in a couple of letters coming out in a few hours.
Okay, this is another comment.
Mm-hmm.
It says you need to hire teachers to teach small groups of children to read. So many children struggle and need intensive practice. If we had that service in each school, there would be no need for Saturday school. You need more teachers and less chiefs.
I really like Saturday school. I think sometimes as a community, we know what has worked in the past, but I think we just have to be reminded of where the world is going. I think we're no longer competing with Elyria and Amherst. We're competing with China and Singapore. We're competing with kids not only in Lorain, but in Los Angeles, right? So this no longer is a competition against those that are here, and we have to do extra. We are not in a space where we can do just enough. We actually have to step up our game and do more because that is the only way we can close the gap between those that have and those that have not. So that work is going to extend beyond just the Monday through Friday and definitely beyond just small group instruction. We need to do a lot more.
Okay. How was the percentage of standard-based lessons calculated?
So there were 94 classroom observations across the district. And there was a team of individuals, objective individuals that were just a team of folks that went into classrooms, reviewed lessons, lesson plans, the instruction to see if it was matching, one, the rigor of the standard, but also the relevance of the actual standard. So that happened over the course of, I believe, a day or two. It was over an entire week, and that information was collected that way, yeah.
How many years have you taught in a classroom, not supervisory, that's the word.
Okay.
And at what grade levels?
Yep, so I mentioned I was a middle school teacher. I started teaching in 2003. I taught for the better part of 5 years at Madison Middle School and then went off to Phyllis Wheatley Elementary School where I spent a year and quickly went back to middle school. I tip my hat to elementary school teachers every single day. And yeah, so I guess that answers the question. And then as a principal, I guess so I can count 3 years as a principal. So as a principal, I also taught English language arts.
Okay. Will there be an online academy?
No. Mm-mm.
And I don't know what SBG in high school next year.
Oh, standards-based grading. It is not slated to happen in high school right now, but again, that is a question and conversation that would happen at the high school with the school leadership team.
And on this card also is, have there been any manifestation, determination hearings for IEP discipline?
Yes. Yes. I don't know how else to answer that question.
Where does your information for the big board generate from?
Yep, so there's a bunch of different things. The big board's broken up into 3 parts, an academic component, an effort component, and a behavior component. The academic component consists of standard-based lessons, consists of results on state assessment, consists of also some reading elements as well through NWEA. And then our effort is attendance, mostly attendance, and behavior is both suspension and reactions to certain behaviors that kids exhibit.
Okay, this one has 2 questions. It says, in a Titan touch point, you stated we all need to do whatever it takes to educate the kids in Lorain. If you believe we need to do whatever it takes, why do you continue to refuse to attend the board meetings? Which you answered that question, if you want to. And then in the video and tonight, you spoke of replacing seasoned quarterbacks with younger quarterback. Are you saying you are going to let seasoned teachers go and replace them with younger ones?
No. So again, the sentiment of the analogy, man, I have to get better at my analogies. The sentiment of my analogy was more of making a shift in the direction that a team went, right? So there was an idea in which they wanted to go from good to great. They made a decision to move in a different direction to move forward. It's not about the seasoned quarterback or otherwise. It's about just changing and aligning our thinking around how we'll create a system of excellent schools more rapidly and more effectively over time.
Okay, this is a long one. An elementary teacher had her students write informative essays about snowy owls. She let them glue feathers on pictures of the owl that went with their essay.
Okay.
A chief gave her feedback that she should not have been having the kids glue feathers during the school day. The feathers could have been sent home. The kids were excited. A core value is joy. Why would a chief want to take away joy?
I apologize. All I can see is feathers in my head right now. I would have to know more about the context of what happened there to understand. I don't want to speak out of turn without understanding more about the question. But what I can promise is I can follow up with whoever might know, because I'm sure our chiefs have more context than I do, so that we can find an appropriate answer, and we'll include it in a mailing so people know the answer to that question. But I wish I knew more about that.
Standard-based grading is here.
Yes.
How will you inform the families on this new initiative?
Yeah, so it won't be necessarily informing, it'll be continuing to inform, right? So standard-based grading has been around for some time now this year, all year, and we'll spend more and more time to continue to help our families understand the nuances of it. I will say this, at our CBS meeting yesterday, it was awesome to hear one of our school leaders speak very specifically to the impact of standard-based grading and what it's doing for her school. And I tip my hat, 1, to Ray Bastock for speaking up on standard-based grading, but 2, the importance of how it's changing the conversations around how kids are performing. So when you think about a letter grade A, B, C, or D, you get a letter grade, but you may not know exactly what kids are mastering or not. It's kind of like when you go to the doctors and say, yep, you have a common cold, and they give you, some cough drops. That's not remedying the problem. We need to know specifically the issue. So nonetheless, I think Ms. Bastock did a great job, much better than I did right now, explaining the impact of standard-based grading. But nonetheless, it is something we'll continue to educate our families and communities about.
Okay, what can be done about teachers respecting parents and students as they would like to be respected?
I think there's a few things there, and I understand the sentiment in the question around just relationships between 2 adults. I think for a large part there are a number of great educators who spend hours with their families to make sure that they're communicating appropriately, so I don't want to neglect them in this statement. They do a great job of that. For those families and parents who feel that there is a disconnect, I would love to know about that personally. 1, I think that's a conversation as a community we need to think through and talk through for a few different reasons. And I say this tiptoeing around, I think, a broader issue that sits right in the middle of this room. I think when we think about the demographics of our young people and our families and our schools and our classrooms, and we think about those that are educating our young people, there is a cultural disconnect in many different spaces and times. I think that is something we can't ignore. I think it's a real conversation that we need to accept and appreciate. because I think once we're able to come together and realize our differences, we can see how many more similarities we actually do have. I bring this up because there was actually a young person who I'll remain nameless, who I happened to see he was in a, actually no, he might have been in the hallway, and he came to me with the sentiment that he felt he was being treated differently because of the color of his skin. And he brought that to my attention, and I kept it inside for a while, but I think I kept it inside because I think as a community that is a conversation we need to have, because I think it'll get us further as we think about how we need to move together as a community.
Okay, the last state report card said the district does not have a capital plan for replacement of equipment or repair of buildings, and an instructional plan for replacement of textbooks and materials. Do you plan to put this in your capital plan?
I don't think that's the state report card. I think that was the district review from 2016 maybe. And obviously any of those suggestions or recommendations we're constantly working on. As far as instructional materials, part of the presentation tonight was about how do we increase and improve our instructional materials. We're constantly reviewing that. I think our schools office does a tremendous job thinking through what that should look like. We also have this challenge of is our materials what we need to give kids over time, because everything's moving to a digital platform. So how do we continue to use our digital platforms to do so? But yes, there's a plan to address both of those things. I think the beauty of our schools and the work that Mr. Hawks and his team does is they do a great job of maintaining our wonderful spaces here. So as we think about capital improvements, I think we're lucky, knock on wood, that we don't have to spend a ton of money on building new spaces.
The state of Ohio reported in 2017 that the district lacks consistent curriculum guides for all content areas that link standards, aims, resources, differentiated instruction, and measurable outcomes. Do you plan to change this?
Yeah, so from 2017, we spent a lot of time fixing that. All right, and so when we first got here, one of the first things we did was a diagnostic to see exactly where instructional materials were. And in 2017, that slide that was 17 to 37% literally just said 17%. And a large part of the reason why 17% of our classrooms had standards aligned instruction is because our curricular materials were lagging. So we spent a significant amount of time looking at, and will continue to look at, the right materials that need to be in front of our kids, hence why you're starting to see the uptick in standards aligned lessons, because the quality of materials are starting to improve.
Okay, on the bottom of this card it was, instead of micromanaging, can you add more bodies to work with students?
Instead of micromanaging, add more bodies to work with students.
Okay, and then you answered the question about graduation bring move. Title I, most Title I teachers were let go last year, and pull-out Title I was stopped. The Title I money has been used to pay deans. How is this helping teachers or students? Teachers are not supposed to give extra help to the lower students as well as teach the class.
So I think there's a few things I want to tease out there. I think the intent for having additional deans is to support the classroom, right? I think when I first got here, in many situations, I remember having conversations with school leaders, it was just themselves in a building. And they were everything. They were the nurse. At times they were answering phones. They were doing everything under the sun. But we realized the time should have been spent helping and supporting their teachers directly, because the best coach is the one that is able to meet with someone frequently. When we think about the best teams, and going back to sports, I'll go back to Ohio State. When you think about Urban Meyer and his connection to his quarterback, they were constantly in huddles together. That's what made them great. That's what makes teams great. And so the idea of having more or additional coaches at a school site only helps us get to a place of higher achievement for our kids. It's not necessarily saying that our teachers can't, but I think I personally also like to have someone to talk to about what I need to improve, and I think that's the same for all of our educators, as we know this is a place where we need to grow, and we need someone to help us get there.
Which CMO will hold mandate over closing buildings? Who is sponsor?
I have no idea. No one? I I don't know how to answer that question.
It's
Okay.
just-
No, I understand. I wish I could give a better answer, but there's no CMO, there's no sponsor.
Okay. Elementary task force, anything being placed for students on IEP?
Yeah, I actually had a good conversation with our special education director today, talking about how we can improve our IEP process, but also how to make sure that we're getting more resources to our special needs scholars. So that is something that is on the docket, and I think we need to find a way to the elementary side of it, intervene earlier. Because I think what we're finding is a lot of our kids are moving through the system, needing a lot of supports, and by the time they get to high school, the gap is so wide. So spending more time in elementary is something we want to do. We also know that our special ed population is large, and there's a lot of work to get done there, so we have to prioritize rather than trying to take it all at once.
Okay, and then it says, why did you say teachers made the decision to have students attended as our SLD on TTP?
RESPECT?
SLO.
Got it. So at the beginning of the year, to go back to our core values of
like a
one
D.
for all, we thought long and hard about how can we start to build that collaborative feel at schools, meaning even though you might be walking into a classroom in front of 20, 25 kids, all of the kids in your building are part of your village or a part of your responsibility. And so we said, what are ways that we can create frameworks in which teachers will have to agree upon certain things that will impact them, but most importantly impact the school. And so what we did this year is give schools options in which teachers could opt in and select what SLOs and SGM pieces that they wanted for their evaluation. And so therefore there were options given, and by school they selected.
Are you planning to adjust the start time of school, specifically the high school teachers without tenure? If we are not selected, will we be left unemployed? It doesn't say which one is side one.
Two questions. Start time and limited teachers, I think I heard. Okay, so start time, that has not been off the table, but it hasn't been something that has been deeply considered. Ultimately, the high school decision-making will be led by our executive director. If we're making any changes to start times of schools, it would come out pretty soon, but I don't anticipate it for this year. However, as we look at the autonomies that the system of excellence schools will be afforded to our schools, that is something that could be up for conversation later down the road. Again, I don't see that happening for this upcoming year, but there could be an option a year from now of thinking about a year-long calendar or a later start time or all of these other pieces. We're just not there yet. As far as limited teachers, again, at the high school specifically, if you are a limited teacher, you will go through the same selection process as everyone else.
You have created a culture of mistrust, dislike, fear, and animosity with educators. Other than a survey, which will not work, what steps can you and the leadership do to not only improve joy, but to support teachers?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think the reason why I pulled out on one of the previous slides of just listening to you, I think part of that, building that trust and reducing that feeling, is just having FaceTime and talking to teachers. I think there have been asks to speak with teachers in different forms or avenues, but we'll continue to try. I think it starts with conversation. And as we have more and more conversations, we'll figure out each other, we'll understand each other and understand that we actually really want the same thing. We honestly do, but it will take those conversations to get us to a better place.
I think that's it.
Oh, there's two more, or one more.
Why do you get a $10K bonus, and who determines that?
So I haven't received a 10K bonus. I think there was actually a request by someone. It was interesting. They said they want to see the check. I was like, I wish I could show you that check because I surely don't have it. But no, it is something that is built into many superintendent contracts. So it's not unique to mine. And I think it has happened with superintendents prior to me. But nonetheless, that is not a decision made by me. That is made by our Academic Distress Commission.
Okay, why no review for 2017-18 or 18-19?
District review. So there wasn't one in 17-18 because I spoke to the state. I said everything is new here. You can come and give us a review, but there are so many things that I'm trying to figure out. It wouldn't probably benefit us. So when we spoke this year, they said they will come in and provide us a district review. It will happen in later in the spring. So we'll have more information on from the state and how things are going then. So we will have one this year.
Okay, and then this is a comment. Respect comes from all levels. Everyone should show everyone respect.
I agree. I agree. I agree.
Okay, it says, couldn't the same argument you used for bodies to help deans, teachers, be used for children having bodies to help IEP pull out logic?
Yes. I think the answer is yes.
Okay.
And if you have that question, I really do want to answer that question. I'm not trying to dodge it. Just come see me because I want to make sure I understand it.
How much longer do we have to put the levy on the ballot?
Josh, do you know the? November. Okay. November, it comes off January 1st of next year. It has to be filed by August 1st. Thank you.
What will happen if the levy is not put on the ballot?
The levy's not put on the ballot. Obviously, if you think about any budget, right, if we have a certain amount of money and we have $3 million less, we'll have to make reductions. And where those reductions will come through, obviously I haven't thought much about it. I firmly believe that the decisions that are made and those that have the decision will make the decision that is in the best interest of our school district. When that time comes and say those circumstances do change, I will have a conversation with all of you around what we're going to do to make up for the loss of $3 million. But at this point, I really can't speak to it.
And then the last one's a comment. Thank you so much for all you are doing. You are the best I have seen in years.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I truly appreciate it. And I think there's one more coming up. Come on down. But as we conclude, I think what I do appreciate about this conversation in this community is that we can have continued conversations. And as time goes by, I think the question around how we build relationships is those face-to-face conversations. So I'm excited to engage in those conversations as well.
Do you know that many schools abstained from voting because they did not agree with the decision to have SLO as our growth measure? Did school leaders inform you of this?
No. Okay. Any last thoughts? All right. Thank you all for coming tonight. Please safe travels tonight and have a great Friday.
This has been a production of Lorain City Schools TV 20 WLCS.